TED-like talk speaker.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. I was like a life flashback, but in a good way. Thank you all for being here. Hope you had a great lunch. You also do have my permission to sleep if you need to. I know it's a little difficult, but I'll try and see if I can make this interesting for you. All right. So let's dive right in. Steve Jobs. This is a movie I was watching a couple of weeks back. And I was enjoying it all the way till the end, at which point I couldn't shake this one feeling. This movie could have landed me in the hospital. I know it's a weird thing to say, but I promise it's related to the topic, and I'll explain why in a bit. But here's what we are here to talk about today. Why should I care about accessibility? Before I dive deeper into the topic, I want to give you 3 terms to use in case you're not familiar with addressing people with disabilities. Do not address them as specially abled or differently abled. Those are exclusionary terms. So people with disabilities is the term you're looking for. Instead of saying normal users to address people without disabilities, address them as typical users. And lastly, the term ally, A11Y. It's pronounced ally because it's a truncation of the word accessibility, which is A and Y and 11 letters in between. So it very beautifully says that you are an ally to people with disabilities. So I want to give you these terms in case you have questions later. Please feel free to use these to ask questions. So before I picked the topic for this particular talk, these were topics that I was thinking about. I was talking about demystifying accessible design because it's a very broad topic and someone needs to do it. Or, just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what if accessibility in a parallel universe? And when I told my team about this, they told me one thing. Why should I care about accessibility in the first place? And I'm like, great. Great job at like sort of just completely taking all the air out of those things, but a great point as well. A lot of designers here in today's world don't even know why they should care about accessibility. So in today's talk, we're going to talk about it. And hopefully I can change your perspective a little bit, at least get you curious. So let's jump into the first point. Staying relevant. And this is actually divided into 2 points. Let's start off with the first one, and that's startups mature. What do I mean by that? Any small organization, a startup or a little small organization, will eventually become big. And when it does, let's contrast what are the priorities for both of these. Startups care about exponential growth. They care about making money. I shouldn't have used such a small typeface. And looking good aesthetically. Contrast that with what mature organizations want. They want continuous growth. They don't want to lose money. And they want to look good virtuously. Why am I telling you all of this? Because whatever stage of life you are in as a designer today, eventually you will join a mature organization. And when the organization starts caring about accessibility, you will have to care about it by hook or by crook. All right? That's point number 1. Point number 2, little long drawn out, but stay here with me. Let's take a look at physical accessibility. I'm taking the reference of Western culture because in Western countries today, physical accessibility is pretty good. So let's take a look at this. Starting off all the way from ancient civilizations, where it was survival of the fittest. Moving on to something like Middle Ages, where it was limited to things like religious places, churches, monasteries, etc. From there, we went on to the Industrial Revolution. People started caring about making sure that some buildings were accessible to some people. Jump ahead to the 20th century, and things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Section 508, all of those started mandating accessibility in federal buildings. And today, if you go to any Western culture country, it's just a default. You don't think about it. There's accessibility features in the sidewalks, in building entrances, whatnot, right? Now let's jump onto digital accessibility and see what that looks like. This timeline starts from 1960s. That's where the internet sort of began. Accessibility was not really a consideration. 1990s, which is similar to the time frame around where ADA, Section 508 came along, the W3C, World Wide Web Consortium, introduced WCAG. web accessibility, web content accessibility guidelines. Jump ahead to 2000s, and because of the growing number of users, accessibility became more popular, but it was still government, organization, advocacy groups saying that, hey, it's a good thing. You should not do it. And then now, if you look at website design, app design, accessibility is a fundamental aspect of it, and it's because of how many devices and instances we have. But why am I telling you all of this, right? The first two timelines, just contrast. The first one was across ages. The second one was across decades. And let's look at what's happening now. India is changing, right? How many of you know this term? Just raise your hands, geofication, right? This essentially means that once geo came into the market, everything changed. We had access to really fast internet. Everyone had access to really fast internet. Things started changing very quickly. UPI got introduced to the world. We never thought we would be doing payments left and right to the sabzi wala bhaiya of all places, right? And similar to this, a lot of things are going to happen. India is moving really fast. One of those things will be accessibility. You will not know when it hits you, because you did not know when geofication hit you. You did not know when UPI hit you. This is going to happen. And you could be the one leading this change. Because if you're not, someone else will do it, right? That's point number one. Moving on quickly to point number two. You will be disabled. Why am I saying this? A lot of times when you and I are thinking about accessibility, we're thinking of people with permanent disabilities. We're thinking of someone who's blind, someone who's lost a limb permanently, who can't speak, who can't hear, right? But that's not the limit of it. Accessibility is also temporary. You could be suffering with an ear infection, and your hearing is as good as someone who is fully blind, or fully deaf. I'm sorry. You could have a cataract-related thing. In fact, I realized this when I went to like an eye doctor once. This guy put drops in my eyes to say that he was testing something. As I was stepping out the door, he's like, wait a sec, you can't leave right now, because you won't be able to see anything. And I was like, he doesn't know anything. It's my eyes. I'm going to walk out. It was 12 noon. I walked out, and I was like, oh my God. Everything is just bright white. I cannot make out a single thing. I pull out my phone to order an Uber. I walk into the shade, place the order, and I'm like, great, I'm done. I walk out on the street, and I'm like, uh-oh. I can't see my Uber now, because I can't figure out when it's going to come. That's when I realized that I was temporarily blind almost, right? I couldn't see. So, yes. That is, okay, yes. So he was explaining that maybe some of these terms should not be used. I do not know if that's completely accurate, because these are conditions. I do get it. But he's saying use terms like visually challenged. Again, we'll get back to it. I think it's mostly people with disabilities, with a visual disability or auditory disability, etc. Sounds good. All right, getting back. So temporary disabilities is the second kind which I want to make you aware of. And the third kind is situational disabilities. So these are, I mean, if you've ever been in a concert before and you've tried to tell your friend anything and they couldn't hear, well, you're basically, you cannot hear, I mean, they cannot hear, you cannot speak. If you're a distracted driver, if you've got a little baby in your hand and you need to open a door, pull out your keys from your pocket and do that. At all of these points, you are all disabled in one way or the other. And when such things happen, and you've not done things correctly, you're going to ask yourself, what kind of a world have I designed for myself? Right? It is for this moment in your life. It could be you, it could be friends, it could be family members. You as designers have the responsibility to start doing something right today. All right? That gets us to the third point. It's the right thing to do. And this brings us back to Steve Jobs. Now, before I explain what I was going to, how many of you have seen these kind of warnings, either in the beginning of video games or movies or shows, just a show of hands? Okay, great. And this is what it's related to. How many of you knew that it was actually related to epileptic seizures? Raise your hands again. Okay, so I have about like 10% of the hands that came up before. What happens in this condition is sudden exposure to pulsating lights can cause you to have seizures where you are not in control of your body and you're just shaking violently, right? Now, let me tell you why I took that example. So, fair warning, if any of you do have this, please look away. But here's what's going to happen. I've got 2 videos in front of me. This is the movie playing. Notice the difference between the 2 videos. I'm going to let it play for a bit. But this is a scene where Steve Jobs is essentially walking out onto the stage. There's a million cameras on him, and there's flashlights going all over the place. Do you notice the difference between the 2 videos? Yes, I just want to see nods, all right? So one of the videos is darker than the other one, right? All right, so let me explain what's happening. There's a feature in Apple devices, in Apple TVs, your phones, etc., which is known as dim flashing lights. This is a feature that ensures that if there's a bright light coming out from your phone, the operating system itself suppresses it down. So I'm really thankful to the designer that this feature exists. But when I thought about this, I started questioning, why does it exist now? Why didn't it exist when the first iPhone came out? And to that, I understood. The reason is HDR. We all love buying phones nowadays which support HDR, right? Because it's the new cool thing. What does it really mean? Your brights are really bright, and your darks are really dark. And what this does is it makes the entire room really bright in scenes like what I was showing you earlier. And the thought that was going on in my mind, I almost felt like there were cameras on me at that point, right? Because I was watching in pitch dark. And I was thinking, there's a friend of mine who has this condition. And I thought that if he was sitting with me right now, what would be my next action? Because I'm pretty sure he would be having a seizure. It's midnight. I'm going to have to rush him to a hospital. And I was just like, that really shook me. And that's sort of what gave me this thing, that as designers, when you are creating an experience, you're also creating hurdles. You're creating hurdles for someone you have not thought about. So it is your responsibility that when you design an experience, you have to think about others that you haven't thought about and essentially create a good experience for them too. Now, these are the 3 points in summary. Staying relevant, you will be disabled, and it's the right thing. Now that you've all understood the essence of these 3 points, where do we go from here? We started talking about why should I care about accessibility, right? Now that we know a little bit of sense of why we should, let's change that. Let's switch it over to how should I care about accessibility. And I'm not going to recommend like a 10-hour course on accessibility, because I know we don't have that time. But remember how I gave you a term, person with disability? Let's drop an A in there, like that, right? As designers, just start off by creating accessible personas. So you take your persona that you had already, you've created a bunch of these, no one cares about them really, you just like put them in a file somewhere in a folder, but take them out again, and just sprinkle a little bit of disability in there. Just say this person has a hearing loss, or this person has sight impairment, or they're autistic. And again, like I said, no one cares about these personas, so no one's going to ask you why you did it. But once you do it, you'll know that you did it. You'll know that you are thinking about a person with this particular condition. And you might take 1 or 2 decisions differently. So if there's one thing that you start doing after today's talk, it's just add a little disability section in your persona. And if someone does ask you, just be smart about it. It's like, I care about accessibility all the time. This is how it's done, right? So essentially, you've got to take some effort right now. You've got to do it consciously right now. But just like riding a bicycle, it's going to become muscle memory. And that's the place where we want to get to. And eventually, create a world where everybody, irrespective of their abilities, leads a wholesome life. Before I wrap up, I just want to give a shout out to this typeface, which is Atkinson Hyperlegible, which is the typeface I've used across this presentation. It's from the Braille Institute, and it's supposed to provide greater legibility for people with low vision. Whenever I've given this talk before, I've been asked the question, how does it make things more legible? And here is a link to a YouTube video which explains that, but essentially it's the differences between the characters and just making them a little more separate. And wonderful. Oh, there you go. Shout-outs. So I want to give a shout-out to 2 people. Vivek Raju, who's part of my team, and he's going to give a talk tomorrow which is user-centric to story-centric. And he's the one who helped me sort of polish this presentation into like a story. And then Shubham, on the other hand, who introduced me to Atkinson Hyperlegible at the last moment, because of which I was able to include it. But yes, that's all, folks. Thank you.